Hey kiddos, so this video goes over how your DBQ essays will be graded using the rubric. This is really beneficial. If you can understand how it's going to be graded, you're going to have a better understanding of how to write it and how to phrase your sentences and organize it the most efficient way as possible. Because remember, the DBQ, you have 1 hour to read the documents, organize them, analyze them, create a thesis or make a thesis statement, and then write your essay. So you don't have a ton of time. Keep in mind, I know, and the readers at the AP Reading know that it's a rough draft. It's not going to be a perfectly written essay. That's okay. And so keep that in mind when you're writing this essay. We're using the hot dog essay today. And just remember that, I've taught this for a certain number of years. I wrote this essay. I didn't even write it, and it probably took me an hour to write it because I wanted it to be very well organized and articulate to kind of show you kind of an ideal situation. You can for sure score a 7 on the DBQ without it being as organized and precise as this one is, okay? So we're going to go over the essay. I'm going to show you where it scores the points, and I've also highlighted my essay to show you in case, and you have access to this document, so that if you want to go in and look, like in the future, if you're writing an essay, a DBQ next week, and you want to say like, well, how did she show that she supported her thesis again? You can look at this document and you can find the properly highlighted color, okay? So in class, we have talked about how we're going to, or how I'm going to highlight my document. So for contextualization and that outside SFI, so any type of SFI, specific factual information that helps supplement or support my argument, is kind of this red color. I've underlined my thesis. The most confusing part is right in this area. So the purple is any time, this is that gimme point, right? Where it talks, where in the, as I'm using the document, I'm somehow kind of like briefly describing or summarizing. And the reason they give you that point is because it's supposed to be an easy one. You're probably going to do it if you're showing that the document supports your thesis and you are explaining it, so using your HIP strategy, you're probably going to describe it just by default. I did make an effort in this essay to really kind of summarize the document, but you could easily do that in your supports as you're supporting it. So that's an easy one. Everyone should be able to describe the document. But where it gets a little bit more difficult is in the support. So you have to show how this supports your argument. You can even use that word if you really want to. And then the thing that we've been practicing all year with primary sources and secondary sources is the HIP strategy, explaining, showing analysis of it, okay? And so that's highlighted blue, okay? I'm really gonna kind of go over probably in depth, like the first 2 body paragraphs, and then I'll kind of speed it up a little bit, okay? But first, let's start with our introductory paragraph. Your introductory paragraph, you are setting the scene. You are providing context for your thesis statement and for your essay, okay? And you can do that a couple different ways. You can talk about, well, what's going on like right before the time period. So for example, if you were gonna write an essay on the progressive era, which was about improving society, the government reforming certain injustices within society, the federal government. It would be important in your introductory paragraph to talk about like, well, how did we get to this point in time where Americans were upset enough and the federal government felt like they had to make a decision? So you would talk about the Gilded Age, and you would talk about monopolies, or, urbanization and poverty and income inequality. Like you would talk about those things, okay? So with the hot dog DBQ though, you kind of have 2 options. You could talk about the history of the hot dog. That would provide context. Or you could talk about this growing debate over the question, the prompt. Is it a hot dog or is it a sandwich or is it both? So I have a long introductory paragraph. You could do one or the other. So I start, the hot dog is an important piece of the American identity. For over 100 years, Americans have enjoyed the hot dog at backyard gatherings, professional sporting events, on urban street corners, and rural local dives. That provides context for the history of the hot dog, right? More specifically, I say, history dates back to when Polish immigrant Nathan Handwerker, and that's SFI, it's not mentioned in any of the documents, took the iconic Frankfurter sausage and began to sell it on abundant street food in Coney Island. It gained popularity throughout the decades and was even served to the King of England when he visited the Roosevelts at the White House. That provides context. I could theoretically just jump into my thesis there, but I thought that we should have a little bit more transition. So that's one way to get context, or I also think that these next couple sentences provide context. As with anything that gains popularity and notoriety, there are also controversy. In recent years, Americans have been asked to classify this American delicacy as a sandwich in online polls, which has led to a series of disagreements on various social media platforms. That also provides context for this essay. Although a hot dog is a sandwich by definition, American culture and its unique consumption sets it apart from the sandwich category. That is my thesis statement. It is a complex thesis statement. It evaluates the extent to, in definition, it seems like it's a sandwich. However, according to Americans, it's not. Like, that is basically what I'm arguing, and I'm going to argue in my essay. Because remember, you have to use at least 6 documents to score maximum points. If I had argued one or the other, right, if I said, yes, it's a sandwich because of these 2 reasons, there aren't 6 documents that would support that, because it's a nice mix of both. And that's why this is kind of an interesting to start with, because it's forcing you, even though you might not like it, it's forcing you to look at the complexity of the question. Okay. So on my rubric, I have provided, here's text. I have provided, make it a little bit bigger, context, and my thesis statement is defensible. It establishes a line of reasoning. The line of reasoning part is the word definition. That's my line of reasoning. It is a sandwich because it's defined as so. It is not a sandwich because of American culture and the way it's consumed. Those are lines of reasoning. They're historically defensible. And it's in the first paragraph. Okay. I have some students that, for whatever reason, they try to put it in early in this process. They'll put it, the first sentence, in their second paragraph. The AP readers cannot accept that. It has to either be in the first paragraph or in the last paragraph. Okay. So far, 2 points. When you organize your body paragraphs, okay, you want something called a topic sentence. So I have a note over here in case you want to refer back to that. The topic sentence is, you're going to include part of your claim in that first sentence of that body paragraph. You're going to tell the reader that I'm about to focus on point 1, claim 1. My first claim in my thesis statement is, yeah, it's a sandwich because of the definition. So in my topic sentence, it says, in order to evaluate whether or not a hot dog is a sandwich, it is important to know what the definition of a sandwich actually is. So I'm telling my reader, let's talk about the definition. So for document 1, I'm going to start with document 1. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary is the authority on the English language, and its purpose is to clarify the exact markers of a sandwich. It uses the terms split roll or bun and a filling, the sausage, and therefore it would seem that a hot dog does meet the definition. Okay, I'm going to talk about the documents first and how I hit my 3 points. I first started out with the purpose of Merriam-Webster Dictionary. One, I gave some context to what that was, right? But also I used the word, its purpose was to. So that's how I get the explains point. Okay? Highlighted blue. I then summarize or describe in purple what they state, that there's a split roll and there's a filling. The hot dog meets those requirements, okay? Therefore, supporting my argument, a hot dog meets the definition. That supports my argument. And that is how I score those 3 points for document 1, okay? Notice that with document 1, you only need to cite it one time. I like to do it at the very end. I'm done with this document now. I'm going to move on to more evidence. And so I cite it right there. You can do document 1. I do doc 1. I put it in parentheses, nice and neat at the end. Okay. Some things that I do not recommend you doing. Okay. Give the author credit. Don't say, document 1 says, because document 1 didn't say it. Like, that's just not a good way to articulate it. The readers will kind of like probably judge you a little bit, and you want it to be as easy for them as possible. So really make sure that you're giving, you mentioned Merriam-Webster, you mentioned Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her point of view. It's their point of view. It's their purpose. Okay. It's their intended audience, not the documents. Okay. Going into document 2, which is a very similar document, and there's a reason why I'm going to say that. Per this definition, that means that a PB&J is a sandwich, a grilled cheese is a sandwich, and even a tomato sandwich is a sandwich, okay? I've highlighted these red because these are my pieces of outside SFI. I just kind of made that up for the hot dog DBQ, right? But peanut butter and jelly is something specific. It's a factual thing. It's something that people eat and consider a sandwich. And PB&J is not mentioned in any of the documents. Notice that I didn't highlight grilled cheese because grilled cheese is mentioned in one of the documents. So that would not count as outside SFI, okay? So on the rubric, once I come to that, I'm like, oh, wait, yeah, that's good. That's not mentioned anywhere. They get that point, okay? You put that right there, outside evidence, okay? However, the USDA defines the sandwich as something that contains cooked meat and bread. I've described that document. The USDA's purpose in identifying a sandwich is to regulate companies that produce, market, and sell food to consumers and therefore subject to the government's inspection. I've explained their purpose. It's blue. Although there may be disagreement about the specifics of the definition, a hot dog does meet those standards. It supports that it's a sandwich, okay? Doc 2. Notice, though, that I did not group document 1 and document 2. I did not say both documents 1 and 2 define a hot dog as a sandwich. Don't do that. They need to be separate. You won't get credit on the rubric for this, okay? It doesn't work that way. I could give you credit maybe for one of them, but not for both. They want you to be separately analyzed. There are differences between those two documents, and that's what I addressed that, and you would need to do the same thing. So I described it, supports my argument, and I explained it, okay? So you kind of get the idea of what we're doing. I'm going to do the same thing when I argue, and I've underlined these parts because I say this is where I can earn that complexity point. This lack of consistency in the definition of a sandwich, though proves the lack of consistency in the definition of a sandwich proves the complexity of the question. Per USDA requirements, grilled cheese is not considered a sandwich by the U.S. government. The definitions on its face are missing important context to the identity of the hot dog and how it's interpreted by Americans. So because my thesis is complex, because throughout my essay, I'm going to look at the complexity of it, that is how you earn the unicorn point, okay? You can also in the concluding paragraph, and I'll show you that as well, okay? So my second body paragraph is all about, so again, topic sentence, it's all about, it's different than a sandwich, and it's because of American culture. And that is where I use document 7, which is the poll. I describe it, I explain it, and it supports my thesis. Same thing with document 3. Okay, document 3 is the National Hot Dog Council. I talk about their point of view. I frame it in a way that supports my argument. I briefly describe what they say. Okay. And the same thing for my third body paragraph. I have a topic sentence. I hit each of my 3 requirements for each document. Now, this is important. You're not like, it's going to be rare for kids to hit all of these. It's hard to do, and that's okay. All right. That's okay. But it does meet each of these, and it's something that we're going to practice and we're going to get better. Okay. I also actually wanted to show you that you could just do this. So if you actually look at, if it'll let me delete it. If you look at like what it actually says, or in like the right here, you only need to do, it could look like this if you wanted to. Like, let's say you miss the boat and you like mess up some, like you just get the analysis wrong or whatever. Come on, let me delete it. Okay. As long as it describes, 3 are described, 6 have to support, and at least 3 have to explain. You can still get the same score as if you had all of those X's marked, okay? All of those boxes marked. So that's important to understand, okay? So now down to my concluding paragraph. Technically, I've already gotten this last point, but I want to show you again what I would do with your concluding paragraph, okay? Restate your thesis. It's a really good opportunity for you to do that. Sometimes it's more articulate at the end. You've made a stronger argument, and the reader can give you the point here. So like maybe it's really weak in the beginning. You're like, the reader's like, oh, I don't know. Like it might not be, it's not strong enough. Like, is there a line of reasoning? But let's say that by the end and you've worked it all out and you've got your flow going, at the end, it could really solid thesis that identifies a line of reasoning. So try your thesis one more time in the concluding paragraph, kind of summarize what your argument is, and go for the complexity if you want to. So if the essay is about causation, right? The Gilded Age corruption caused the Progressive Era to happen, something kind of like that. You could also talk about comparison. So this reaction is similar to New Deal policies during the Great Depression because blah, 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 blah. So you could compare something. You could show how progressive reforms is like a continuity. Like, so you could talk about progressive reforms in the future or in the past. So you could look at one of the other historical thinking skills. Or you could just, again, write a thesis statement that looks at the complexity of the issue in the moment. They're similar and they're different. There are changes and there's also continuity. So you could do it that way. So my like main point was, you know, if we stick to just these limiting definitions, and a lot of you wrote these in your essays, which I thought were really funny, but, you know, is ice cream soup? Is a Pop-Tart a burrito? Is a taco a hot dog? To kind of like be funny, but also show you that it is complicated, and so is history, okay? So I hope that this was helpful. Again, we will talk about this in class, and you are more than welcome to, and we're going to practice it a lot, and you are more than welcome, to ask any questions at any point in time, and we're going to practice this a lot. I promise. Have a good afternoon. Bye.